A group of pink and white English coal miners playing soccer in a park is not an everyday sight in the hot inland mining town of Dysart. But then, neither are they everyday coal miners. The white legs chasing the plastic soccer ball belong to some of the world's top musicians, members of the Grimethorpe Colliery Brass Band. They've been appearing at the Perth and Adelaide festivals, and as their Australian tour was partly sponsored by the Utah Foundation, this week they've given concerts in the Utah mining towns of Moranbah, Dysart and Blackwater. The bandsmen from the Yorkshire mining village have been in the top rank of British bands for half a century, and now they're widely acknowledged as probably the best in the world. One reason for that is they're not afraid to experiment.
I think the trend we're setting is really to open people's minds to look at the brass band afresh, anew, and look at the potential that's there, because I still believe that there is a great deal of resource that's untapped within the brass band. We're doing things now at Grimethorpe which are being looked at by people all over the Great Britain, all bands over Great Britain, Europe, in fact the whole world. Everybody's looking to what Grimethorpe are doing next. It's mainly because over the last 10 years, with the influence of our musical advisor, Alga Howarth, he's brought along new ideas, new pieces and special commissions from very important, prominent worldwide composers.
While they're now in the league of Albert Hall concerts and overseas tours, the musicians of Grimethorpe remain proud of the cloth-cap, working-class origins of the brass band tradition. What do you see yourselves as, miners or musicians?
A bit of both, I think.
Yeah, well, I left school when I was 15 and I went to work straight in the coal mines, because where we live, that's basically there's nothing else, only coal mines. There's a lot of local brass bands. Every colliery more or less has its own band, and it's a tradition to play.
And how old were you when you started, Bob?
Well, I started when I was 10 years of age, but I didn't go straight into the mines. I was 19 when I went in the mines.
And how long did you play for altogether?
I started when I was 10, and I've continued until probably 10 years ago.
So that's about 50 years?
Roughly, yes.
How much time do you spend on music?
Quite a lot.
We practice 2 nights a week as a full band, Monday night and Thursday night for 2 hours as a full band, but individually everybody has to practice just hours on their own to keep the standard as what's required.
When I started, if you could blow at all, you were in, but now people are taught how to play it properly, to produce good sound.
I think Grimethorpe's changed from being a brass band into what I should call a brass orchestra.
Say I was a trombone player and I wanted to join the Grimethorpe Colliery Band. How would I go about doing it?
You would have to apply, and if you were good enough, we would accept you probably, but otherwise, no.
Would I have to get a job at the Grimethorpe Colliery?
Yes, I think so, yes.
And you'd have to pass an audition. Everybody in the band has an audition to be.
Do lots of people want to join?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yeah,
quite a few, yes.
I think you've got to have a good band to start with. I mean, at Grimethorpe, I'm very lucky to stand in front of such a wonderful bunch of musicians. You know, each chair holds a soloist in his own right. But to put it together, the teamwork is incredible with the rehearsal that we do and the sort of music that we could do. The potential is still enormous.
On stage, the Grimethorpe Colliery Band has taken audiences by storm from Perth to Dysart. Australian critics have used terms such as complete technical mastery to describe them. It's a credit to the musicianship and stamina of the bandsmen that their skill is still there near the end of an arduous tour in a land that's so different from their own. What's your tour of Australia been like?
Wonderful.
A good reaction from people?
It's been a great experience.
It's been
The
fantastic.
people have made us very welcome, yes.
And the travelling, has that been a problem? It's been a very heavy tour.
Travelling gets a bit tiring, but
It's
you're
been-
recompensed in other ways, I think. You know, you meet people, you'd like to spend a bit of time with them. It isn't always possible, but you've got to keep moving on. But it's been a great tour.
What have been your main impressions of Australia?
Well, my impression, we've never been before. It's just the vastness of the country. and how you can travel 1,000 miles and don't even know you've travelled it, really. Home, if you're travelling by coach, everywhere we play, you know, hours sat in the bus, you're tired before you get there, but here you can travel miles and miles and don't realise you've done it. The country's just so vast.
What about banding in Australia? What have you noticed during your tour here?
I've noticed quite a lot of enthusiasm, although even the top bands only seem to rehearse once a week. Back home, even a lot of the second and third section bands, some of the fourth section bands, they rehearse twice a week at least. Perhaps the distances make a big difference, but the enthusiasm is still there. I've heard one or two reports of some very fine players. But it does seem to me that it's very much a secondary musical activity within the sphere, the overall sphere of music making in this country. Perhaps a little bit looked down upon.
Why is it looked down on? As a working class amusement?
I'm not really qualified to say, but just from an outsider looking in, it does look as if the education system is very much geared towards orchestral brass tuition. That is trumpets, you know, trombones and French horns, gearing all the young people to take up education and a career in music making this way. But really, in our country, there's far more scope to, it's shown in our country, there's far more scope for brass players to be taking up cornets, tenor horns, and euphoniums and baritones, this sort of thing, you know.
Has banding in Britain lost its cloth cap image?
Not entirely. I don't think it ever will, because of the amateur status and because it's very much, well, there are a lot of bands there, you know, thousands and thousands of bands in Great Britain, and there will always be a lot of basic bands, town and village bands who just fulfill a very mediocre position, and they enjoy it. It's wonderful to see such small town village bands, and there are a lot of youth bands. Great, it's marvelous to see so many young people taking an active life in the youth bands that are around. But the pyramid, you see, the basis wideness of the pyramid is so high, and bands like Grimethorpe and Black Dyke and Brighouse have helped to elevate the whole situation, upmarket the whole image of brass bands.
So for the banding movement to take off in Australia, it's got to change the attitude of educators, the community as a whole?
I think so. I mean, there will always be diehards within brass bands and outside of them as well, but I think it's got to come from the young people themselves.
And how can this be done?
I think in the education system.
There's a story that a leading Queensland bandsman, after hearing the Grimethorpe band, said in disgust that he was going home to chop up his euphonium. But it's not only the technical virtuosity of the Yorkshire coal miners that makes them so good. Their style of music is quite remarkable too. It's not just a traditional brass band sound, nor just a big band sound. It's a mixture of both with other elements added. It's Grimethorpe sound. Sometimes it's difficult to accept that all these musicians are amateurs, but they fiercely defend the brass band tradition of amateurism.
Let me make this point very clear, that Grimethorpe Band is like any other band in Great Britain. It's very much an amateur situation. It's a hobby for everybody in the band, very time-consuming, intense hobby, but the band are a member of the Musicians' Union, and we do occasionally play for films and radios and television broadcasts. It's a very exciting life.
Is it ever possible, do you think, that the Grimethorpe band could cease to be an amateur band and become a professional one? Or is that heresy?
No, I don't think
No, I
so.
don't think so.
No.
It's tradition that Grimethorpe has a band and a colliery band, and I think everybody's proud to think that they are just amateurs.
But if you had professional players, wouldn't they be better players?
No, I don't think so. I think some of our lads can't be beat.
Debatable
They're
point, that.
very happy
Yeah.
and content to play for Grimethorpe.